Hello, class. So this is the second week of tourism, HRM 180. Last week, we really didn't talk a lot about tourism. We really didn't get into a lot. So this week, we're going to just begin our look and our dive into tourism. What we're going to be talking about is just a few things. Let's see if I can get this to work. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the definition of travel tourism, tourists, things like that, modern tourism in the industry, the history of travel and tourism, and the future of tourism. Um, we're going to briefly touch on these things. We're not going to go into a lot of detail about history. Some references are like exhaustive, all kinds of things to every little culture that's ever existed. But we're just going to touch on some highlights that I think are important to the modern understanding of it, and then have a little fun with some of this stuff. So here we go. All right. So tourism defined. This is several different definitions that I found. The first one being from Microsoft is the activity of people traveling and staying in places outside of their usual environment for leisure, business, and other purposes, typically for less than one consecutive year. Now, this is a very good one for a couple reasons. It includes a variety of reasons. Some of the more traditional dictionary type things all list tourism as leisure activity, but it's not always a leisure activity. We in the tourism industry and the hospitality tourism industry will take the money if someone is traveling for business just as easy as we'll take the money for someone traveling for leisure. All right. So we consider in the industry, we consider tourism to include multiple reasons for travel. Okay. So a second one from Oxford is the commercial organization and operation of vacations to visit to places of interest. Again, this one's more focused on the vacationing and the leisure travel. Okay. And then the last one is, I think, is probably the best one. The activity of visitors taking a trip to a main destination outside of their usual environment, usually for less than a year, for the main purpose of including businesses, leisure, and other personal purposes. Because there's other things besides leisure and business. There's religious reasons and other things, personal reasons, other than to be employed by the resident entity. So we're not talking about people who come in from out of another country on a green card or on a travel visa or on a visa for work. We're talking about people coming on a vacation visa or a travel visa, or I can't, it's not work, so I don't know what the classification is. But anyway, that's what we're talking about here. Okay, so let's move forward. Okay, domestic tourism. Domestic tourism. It's hard for me not to say domestic terrorism. Domestic tourism. That's visits within a country by visitors who are residents of the country. So Americans visiting America. All right, we are probably the most significant country for domestic tourism. A lot of countries have a significant part of domestic tourism, but as far as the money spent by people who don't live where in the town where they're a specific town, but still within the same country, we probably have got that killed, right? We do a lot of that because we got so much within our country. All right. So Americans visiting other parts of the U.S. accounted for 90% of all trips within the country. All right. Italy is about half of all trips are international. All right. Just a little less than half that are international. I think it's like 56% domestic. But then you have some nations that are close to the United States. France is close, even though France is one of the biggest tourism destination in the world. They still make about 75 to 80% of their trips to be domestic. So that's pretty impressive. All right. So let's move forward. Let's see. Did I get everything there? Oh, Italy. I did say that. All right. Inbound tourism. What is inbound tourism? Wherever you are, people are coming to you for tourism. Okay. So that is visits by a country by visitors who are not residents of that country. Okay. The activities of visitors from abroad entering a specific country and spending time there without becoming residents. That's a key one, without becoming residents. If you're on a work visa or something like that, you're generally coming there to become a resident. well, I guess it's temporary work too. So anyway, we'll move forward. All right. So outboard tourism, outbound, excuse me. The activities of a country's residents traveling outside of their home country and staying abroad for a short period, usually less than a year. Okay. Visits by residents of a country outside of that country. So the visitors, if we got visitors, they're from outside the country. Wait a minute. Oh, no. Okay, no, let's just say is visitors leaving the country to go visit another country. That's very confusing verbiage. That came from a European source. So anyway, what we're talking about here with these different type of definitions already, or so far, is we're just talking about perspective, right? You have inbound tourism as people come to see you. Domestic tourism is people staying in a particular country. And then outbound is people leaving your country, your people leaving the country to go somewhere else. We can make money on all of those things. All right. So I don't think any one of those three is better or worse than the other. They're just different types of tourism. All right. So let's move forward. All right. So who is a tourist? A tourist is a person who's traveling or visiting a place for pleasure. Again, this is the for whatever reason, the dictionaries were really more focused on pleasure, but we're going to take that for now. All right. One that makes a tour for pleasure or culture. At least culture is a little bit better than just pleasure, I guess. A traveler is someone who moves between different geographical locations for any purpose and any duration. Now that's a traveler. A tourist would generally be considered for less than a year. All right, so let's move forward. History of tourism. You're going to get a lot of different perspectives on the history of tourism, how it first started and all that, and even defined what it was. And people can be very loose with their interpretation of what is comparing something that happened in other times with what's happening or what we know as something today. But in ancient Egyptians did travel for festivals and religious pilgrimages. So generally speaking, prior to the Second World War, the entire history of the world prior to that, most traveling was either done for necessity or only very wealthy people. Okay, so that's something to take into consideration. But anyway, some people say that the Egyptians were the first tourists because they did travel to go to different festivals and pilgrimages. All right, the introduction of the first Olympic Games in 776 BC, so that's a long time ago, was the first major stimulus for tourism. That was an event that caused people in droves to go to it. All right. So during classical times, that's again says Roman, Greek, whatever. During classical times, the conquest and administration of overseas territories created a demand for business-related travel. So if you read a study about the Roman world, when they were taking over different places, even in the Greeks of Alexander, whatever, the elite would have to travel and be very well traveled. And even back then when it took a very long time. All right. So Rome became an important urban tourism destination. Rome, the city of Rome, not the empire, but the city became a very important tourism destination because as the empire got bigger, you got more citizens, you got a larger upper class group of people. And then Rome, because it was the capital and it was the epicenter of things, everything, if you wanted to be somebody, you had to go to Rome. So that really started introducing tourism and aspects of tourism. People talk about back in the, classical times or whatever, hotels and stuff. They didn't exist the way they do now, but we started to see in Rome the beginnings of things that would later could be argued as the forerunners of some modern concepts like inns, bars, even tour guides. vendors, souvenir vendors and stuff like that. There's ancient coins that are souvenirs. So that all really starts to establish that tourism is going to be a thing. Okay. So now during the Middle Ages, travel was primarily for religious purposes. Now during the Renaissance, you had a couple of things going on. I mean, you had people more interested to travel and stuff, or before the Renaissance, between the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, you had people who wanted to, and then there were a lot of religious pilgrimages and stuff like that. But then you had an emerging class, people that had the wherewithal to go and travel. But the Reformation, the Christian Reformation, the reformers, Luther and the others, really wanted to downplay leisure time. They felt like it was more pious or more whatever to devote a life to work. So that kind of put a damper on it. All right. And then in the 18th century, it started, especially in Europe, you started seeing something called the European Grand Tour, which was if you were wealthy aristocrat in Europe during that time, the 1700s, the 1800s, you were going to spend years or months at a time traveling throughout Europe and other places. And it was an idea that everybody who, as part of their education, it was how they learned about, cultures and manners and connecting with the past, the antiquity. That really became a thing, fostering social status. This started really to decline, though, after the French Revolution. Life became very basic after that for a lot of folks. Okay, so in the 18th, 19th century, advances in transportations, trains, steamships, that really started to make things more affordable. Early 20th century growth of hotels, seaside resorts, and then international exhibitions. Again, we're still talking about wealthy folks here. All right. But then after World War II, we started seeing things like commercial aviation, paid vacation time, rising incomes, and international travel much more accessible, and even domestic travel. Emergence of global hotel brands started happening, and tour operators, jet travel in the digital age transformed booking and travel. Somewhere here, I've missed a bullet. There was the introduction of the automobile that really increased domestic tourism. The rise of mass tourism, cruise tourism, theme parks, and other ecotourism that started come as we approach today. And now today we're starting to see, online, online booking platforms, smartphones, peer-to-peer lodging. That's Airbnb, otherwise known as the sharing economy. Sustainable tourism, and then over-tourism are things that we're all dealing with now. And that is pretty much tourism today. Statistics, $689 million per day from international travelers into the United States. Every day, international travelers spent, $689 million every single day. That's a lot of money. International visitors to the U.S. in the year 2024 spent $190 billion. $1.73 trillion globally annually spent in tourism. Okay, the travel and tourism sector supported 357 million jobs worldwide. Okay, the future of tourism: continued global growth, large population activities in developed nations. Developing nations are increasing outboard tourism. AI, other things like that is going to really affect us for the good, for the bad. Inbound tourism in the Middle East is increasing. Asia Pacific is becoming a tourism powerhouse. And even space tourism is in our future. Okay. And let's see. So in summary, I'm cutting this short because I'm running out of time. We talked about tourism, the brief history of it, statistics, aspects of contemporary tourism and future operations. So we'll have a case study and a discussion this week, and I look forward to reading what you write there and to speaking with you during the discussions. All right? Excuse me. Let's have a great week.